Hello, everyone across the world. It is a pleasure to welcome all participants to this 2021 HLPF special event, SDG Acceleration Actions towards Sustainable Recovery and Development. My name is Christy Davis. I will be your moderator this evening. I'm dialing in from Singapore Management University in Singapore. I would like to thank the Department of Economic and Social Affairs for inviting me to moderate this exciting event. And I am pleased that a large number of people from across the globe are joining us virtually in light of these current circumstances that unfortunately prevent us from being together in person. So without further ado, please allow me to invite the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, Mr. Liu Zhenmin, to deliver his opening remarks. Sir, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christy, for moderating this session. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all participants around the world. Ambassador Akram, President of ECOSOC, my friend Alicia, the Executive Secretary of ECLAC, Honorable Ministers, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of DESA, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this special event of the 2021 High-Level Political Forum on SDG Acceleration Actions. Today's event will shine a spotlight on the inspiring efforts by governments and other actors to speed up sustainable recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and promote the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Today's focus on action rather than words is much needed. Due to the pandemic, now more than 8% of the world population live in poverty. Youth are 3 times more likely to be jobless, and over 4 billion people live disconnected from the digital world. We need to ensure that our societies rebuild in a sustainable and resilient manner. To this end, our efforts must be grounded in the universal roadmap provided in the 2030 Agenda and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Ladies and gentlemen, the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, DESA, has set up an online platform to share information about the new and ambitious SDG acceleration actions undertaken by governments and all other actors. This SDG acceleration action database functions as a central space to collect and share details about the key commitments, those made in connection with the major intergovernmental gatherings, including high-level political forum. As of today, over 300 bold, ambitious commitments and initiatives aimed at advancing decade of action for SDGs have been published. These SDG acceleration actions are often based on demand-driven approaches and reflect diverse country and sectoral and local realities. Several of them have also mobilized combined means of implementation, including enhanced capacity building, development cooperation, multi-stakeholder partnerships, and technology development and transfer to boost their scale, scope, and cost effectiveness. Distinguished participants, during this unprecedented time of crisis, we need more SDG acceleration actions that are responsive to the new challenges and to advancing more resilient sustainable development. This morning, I'm looking forward to hearing the examples of SDG acceleration actions from across the globe, examples of novel ideas put into action, stories of smart partnerships. Let us get together to be inspired, and I wish you a very fruitful meeting today. I thank you.
I thank the Under-Secretary General, Mr. Liu, for your vision and priorities for accelerating sustainable recovery and development and about the important role of the SDG Acceleration Actions platform in that regard. Thank you so much. I would now like to give the floor to the President of the Economic and Social Council, Your Excellency, Mr. Munir Akram, for your opening statement. Ambassador, please.
Thank you very much, Christy. Mr. Undersecretary General, Mr. Jimin, Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, Alicia, Brisena, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to join you at this 2021 High-Level Political Forum special event, SDG Acceleration Actions towards Sustainable Recovery and Development. I extend my warm greetings and welcome to all who are with us virtually from across the world. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today we meet in the most challenging of circumstances. The COVID-19 pandemic has devastated lives and livelihoods, triggered an economic recession and social disruption which is unprecedented, especially in developing countries, and reversed the gains of development made over decades. It is, I believe, estimated that the developing countries could lose at least $22 billion in national income. And research suggests that 4 billion people currently lack minimal social protection. To achieve the SDG, the developing countries are estimated to need at least $4.3 trillion in SDG-oriented investment. On present trends, was indicated to us the other day by the managing director of the IMF, most developing countries will not be able to achieve the goals and targets of the 2030 agenda in time. The developing countries need to simultaneously recover from the COVID crisis, realize the SDGs, and address the impacts of climate change and environmental degradation. What we need is a renewed approach to the Sustainable Development Goals, one that is based on action, not just words. Our actions at the national and international level must demonstrate our collective resolve to prioritize the actions that will contribute the most to the SDG. At the national level, governments must prioritize the formulation and implementation of projects and programs for poverty reduction, elimination, social protection, human development, renewable energy, sustainable agriculture and manufacturing, and domestic resource mobilization. At the international level, sufficient finance must be mobilized by international institutions and development partners to provide developing countries the fiscal space and liquidity to overcome the current recession and get back on track to realize the SDGs. The structural deficiencies and inequalities in international finance, taxation, and trade must be rectified. Dear colleagues, excellencies, it is this high-level political forum this year offers a tremendous opportunity for countries and other stakeholders to share their plans and solutions to tackle the current development challenges we face. The initiative by DESA and USG using MIN to encourage countries to make new and additional commitments through the SDG Accelerator Actions is timely and commendable. Through the SDG Acceleration Actions, we still hope to receive new solutions, new commitments across the SDGs that strive to boost sustainable recovery efforts and the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I'm very pleased to note, as mentioned by Ambassador Yu Jin-min, that over 300 bold actions have already been published on the online repository, which is managed by DESA. I hope that these actions will serve as an inspiration to the global community to take further steps to advance the SDGs. The national commitments being made must be matched by international actions and commitments by development partners. Excellencies, as President of the Economic and Social Council, I would like to challenge everyone to consider making bold commitments for transformative action and to work together to accelerate the momentum towards sustainable recovery and the realization of the SDGs during this decade of action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador, so much. Very inspiring, and you set the stage so well for the rest of this HLPF. So thank you so much, sir. It is now my pleasure to invite Ms. Alicia Brisena, Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. Ms. Brisena could not join us in real time today, but has kindly shared with us her message via a video clip. So we'll now play the video. Thank you.
And social affairs, and excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Santiago, Chile, to all connected to this event from around the world. Thank you, dear colleague Liu Shenmin, Undersecretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, and all of his team at DESA for extending me this invitation to participate in this very relevant event. Special thanks to His Excellency Munir Akram, President of the Economic and Social Council, and his team for the extraordinary efforts to convene the 2021 high-level political forum under very challenging circumstances. Quiero enviar un saludo a Carlos Rognoni, viceministro del Ministerio de Desarrollo Agropecuario de Panamá, quien participa en esta reunión. I'm not connected in real time with you today, but did not want to miss this opportunity to reflect on the concept of accelerating actions towards the Sustainable Development Goals. I couldn't think of a better way to convey the urgency that our times demand to raise the ambition towards achieving sustainable development. The political declaration gearing up for a decade of action and delivery for sustainable development, unanimously adopted at the opening of the SDG Summit in September 2019 by all UN members, already sought to accelerate SDG implementation by 2030 and leave no one behind. COVID-19 pandemic and its negative impacts on many of our development goals, from poverty to unemployment, from achieving gender equality to quality education for all, set us back in our progress by years, if not decades. Latin America and the Caribbean, for example, has been hardly hit, having only 8.4% of global population, accounts for a fifth of cumulative reported cases and close to a third of registered deaths related to COVID-19. The region has suffered a 7.1% GDP contraction in 2020 and faces another lost decade. In 2020, poverty rose 33% and extreme poverty 12%, an increase of 22 million and 8 million people respectively compared with 2019. In 2020, countries dedicated 4.6% of GDP to emergency responses and 2.5% of GDP to public credit guarantees. However, These efforts are dwarfed by the expanded fiscal space enjoyed by developed countries. In fact, the region's public debt has risen by more than 10 percentage points of GDP. And we are the most indebted region of the developing world, 77% of GDP. And we register the highest external debt service as a percentage of the exports of goods and services, 59%. In other words, many countries in the region now face serious fiscal constraints, including financing the recovery. As a region of predominantly middle-income countries, Latin America and the Caribbean has not benefited from multilateral debt relief solutions and has limited access to concessional financing options, with special adverse effects for small islands and development states such as the Caribbean. However, this bleak picture does not mean we will remove our foot from the gas pedal with regards to the implementation of the SDGs. As a matter of fact, our challenging time calls for us to reaffirm our commitment and raise the ambition in achieving our common vision of transforming our world by 2030. The recovery from COVID-19 is an opportunity for governments and stakeholders alike to build forward better, to respond to socioeconomic impacts of the pandemic and address the looming crisis of climate change. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development stresses the urgent need for concerted action by all stakeholders at all levels to deliver on the 17 SDGs and remains our blueprint for action in the short and long term. The SDG Acceleration Actions initiative is a tool to help inspire and mobilize action around the world to promote the implementation of SDGs, build resilience, and bring inclusive recovery in the context of new realities post-COVID-19. So the global economy, planet, and people have to emerge stronger together from the crisis. SDG Acceleration Actions provide a forward-looking perspective on commitments and ambitious actions from different stakeholders, including youth, civil society, the private sector, academia, local authorities, and many more. And this initiative reflects the commitments of all actors in our region. Out of a total of 303 global SDG acceleration actions, 42 actions come from the region of Latin America and the Caribbean as of May 28, 2021. Most of these actions, 81%, aim to address multiple SDGs leveraging interlinkages, while 19 focus on addressing one SDG. SDG 16 has inspired the largest number of the 43 registered actions, followed by SDG on poverty, gender equality, climate action, and partnership. The commitment of the region to a multi-stakeholder implementation of Agenda 2030 is illustrated by the creation of the mechanism for civil society participation in the Sustainable Development Agenda and in the Forum of Countries of Latin America and the Caribbean on Sustainable Development, which was established in 2019. It structures and coordinates the engagement and participation of civil society from Latin America and the Caribbean in the follow-up and review of the 2030 Agenda, and constitutes an institutional instance of participation for civil society organizations of the region, recognized by governments and all relevant regional stakeholders. The mechanism is comprised of 20 working groups divided in 3 main categories: subregions, interest groups, and thematic groups. During these years, Forum of the Countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, civil society actors produce a declaration through this mechanism regarding the Decade of Action, which was presented during the Forum's plenary. In this declaration, the need to strengthen our democratic systems and face the coronavirus crisis from a human rights response was highlighted, as well as promoting decent work and protecting the human rights of defenders of land and the environment, journalists, and human rights defenders, as well as the rights of the most vulnerable, including migrants. These actions are not only urgent, but place people at the center of our development efforts. Now, I would like to highlight the importance of strengthening partnerships across all sectors for an inclusive, green, and sustainable recovery. ECLAC position document, Building a New Future, Transformative Recovery with Equality and Sustainability, identifies priority productive sectors as the basis of an inclusive and low-carbon recovery that fully aligns with the SDG: renewable energy, sustainable mobility, digital revolution for sustainability, healthcare, manufacturing, bioeconomy, circular economy, and sustainable tourism. These sectors have the potential to drive job creation, the strengthening of technological capabilities, and reducing environmental impacts and emissions. In other words, yes, we need to accelerate action, but most importantly, we need accelerated action towards a green and inclusive recovery to face current and future crises. Dear friends, one action in the right direction, even a small one, takes us one step closer to our common vision of a sustainable and just development for all. I thus encourage all stakeholders to raise the ambition and take the respective actions that leave no one behind and protect our planet. I wish you a very successful deliberations. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Brisena, for sharing with us your vision on behalf of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. Now, we would love to showcase some of the ambitious SDG Acceleration Actions undertaken by the governments and other stakeholders that we're going to share with you today. We've got some exciting news from around the world. So we're going to start with Egypt by inviting Her Excellency, Dr. Hala Al-Sayed, the Minister of Planning and Economic Development for the Government of Egypt. Due to an urgent conflicting engagement, Her Excellency, Dr. Hala Al-Sayed, was unable to join us in real time, but has also sent a message via video clip. Please, Dr. Al-Sayed.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first thank the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA, for organizing this high-level political forum special event in an occasion that emphasizes the urgent need to accelerate the implementation of 2030 Agenda and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals at all levels to foster a sustainable recovery. As the foundations of our work have been shaken to the core by COVID-19, it has become clear 1 year on that responding to the pandemic and delivering on the SDGs are both interlinked and necessary. Thus, it is time to act now upon the implementation of the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs as a global priority in our recovery plans. To this end, I'm pleased to announce that Egypt is among 10 countries worldwide that is submitting its third voluntary national review this year during the high-level political forum, reaffirming the full commitment to present our achievements and evaluating the progress towards the implementation of the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs with the international community. Ladies and gentlemen, as we move forward on our efforts to achieve sustainable development, not only at the national level, but also at the regional and global levels, I would like to recognize the efforts of the UNDESA and the online SDGs Acceleration Action platform that presents best practices and experiences from over the world, contributing to accelerating SDGs implementation. As a global multi-stakeholder platform, Egypt is enthusiastic and committed to participate through the SDGs Acceleration Action platform to connect and build a bridge towards the Agenda 2030 by promoting and sharing its success stories with the world. In 2020, Egypt registered 5 initiatives into the SDG Acceleration Action platforms, laying the foundations for a more resilient economy and community capable of weathering adverse unexpected shocks, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Several considerations are taken into account when choosing these initiatives as SDG accelerators. These include showcase the initiative, serving more than one SDG, representing a multi-stakeholder approach, addressing the most vulnerable groups and achieving tangible results on the ground, and positively affected the lives of citizens. In this context, allow me to briefly outline some of the registered actions on the platform. Through the pledge to leave no one behind, Egypt is committed to fast-track its progress for those furthest behind first. The Decent Life Initiative, which is endorsed by His Excellency President Fattah al-Sisi for developing sustainable rural communities by decreasing multidimensional poverty and unemployment rates, with the objectives of improving the quality of life in the poorest Egyptian rural communities. Over the course of 3 years, all rural communities would be covered by Decent Life Initiative, with a target of 58% of Egypt's total population and a budget exceeding $45 billion, 700 billion Egyptian pound. The initiative has been highlighted as a Sustainable Development Goals Acceleration Action Initiative on the UN DESA platform, given its magnitude and impact in achieving the 2030 agenda, guided by the principle of leaving no one behind. Another action that reflects the objectives of Egypt's Vision 2030, especially in terms of equitable, balanced, and inclusive development, as well as the UN Sustainable Development Goals, is the upgrade of slum areas to secure safe housing for all. Accessible and affordable housing is pivotal to Egypt's rapidly growing population. It is our priority to address the growing challenge of the housing gap for low and middle income citizens and the prevalence of the informal settlements. The Egyptian government is committed, together with all relevant partners and stakeholders, to devote special attention to the socio-economic dimensions of the lives of slum dwellers, especially women and children. Activities conducted include healthcare, literacy classes, as well as providing training to ensure decent work opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, mindful that environmental preservation is on top of the national priorities and is indeed an integral part of the Agenda 2030, an initiative for environmental awareness under the title Go Green was launched under the patronage of His Excellency the President, with participation of the government ministries and agencies, civil society, and the private sector. It aims at changing behavior and urging citizens to participate in preserving the environment and natural resources to ensure their sustainability by raising awareness in issues such as limiting the use of plastics, preserving marine creatures, reducing air pollution, and protection of natural reserves. This initiative was also registered on the SDG Acceleration Action platform. There is a clear and specific vision for the integration of environmental dimensions and green investments in the Egyptian development budget. The government of Egypt has recently launched the Environmental Sustainability Standards Guide, making Egypt at the forefront of the region's countries in spreading the culture of sustainability and defining mechanisms for monitoring performance indicators for all sectors to measure progress in the set goal through the implementation of priority projects and activities in the financing and having a positive impact on our environment. The Environmental Sustainability Standards Guide includes sectors not only for government agencies, but also for the private sector and the nation at large. Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to seek better ways of mitigating the impact of the pandemic and to reach best practices across the wide range of countries' experiences, driven by our common goal, the implementation of SDGs and ensuring a sustainable recovery, we still must work together to develop better initiatives for accelerating SDGs implementation. Thank you again. And with that, I look forward to a very fruitful discussion by our distinguished panelists.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for sharing with these inspiring and very concrete commitments that Egypt is making to make the SDGs a reality. Thank you so much. So now we are going to move to Madagascar. So it is a pleasure to invite His Excellency, Mr. Michelangelo Zassi, the Vice Minister of New Cities and Housing for the Government of Madagascar. Mr. Zassi, over to you. Mr. Zassi, can you hear us? Mr. Zassi, if you can hear us, can you please make yourself known? Okay, we'll try and get Mr. Zassi back. So while we wait for him to return to us, I would like to now turn to Panama. I'd like to turn the floor over to His Excellency, Mr. Carlos Rognoni, the Vice Minister of Agricultural Development of the Government of Panama. Your Excellency, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I would like to send you regards on behalf of the government of the Republic of Panama. And I would like to thank the Division for SDG of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs of the United Nations. I am going to share with you the experience of Panama facing the economic and social challenges that has been brought by the pandemic. On March 13, 2020, the government of Panama declared a state of emergency due to the pandemic. 2 weeks after that declaration, the government set up a program called Panama Solidario, or Solidary Panama. And we were, in the beginning, we started giving food bags and also food stamps to buy food and medicines. It started at the end of the month of November 2020. At the end, we have avoided social unrest in Panama, and also the program has helped us to reduce the risk of poverty getting higher due to the pandemic, especially because of the economic and social effects of COVID-19 in Panama and worldwide. We have been operating Panama Solidario for 15 months, and the numbers are really spectacular. As you know, we are a 4.5 million people country. We have delivered 8.7 million food bags all over the country. We have been able to give 3.3 million food stamps for food and medicine. And we also developed internally with the Secretary of Digital Innovation, we were able to create what we call Vale Digital. Vale Digital is a digital credit that is allocated in the social or the Panamanian ID, what we call the cédula of the beneficiaries. And we have been able to allocate 10.7 million vales digitales. Just last month in June, we benefited 700,000 Panamanians with this credit that is now $120 per month, and is exclusively to buy food and medicine. With the help of more than 81,000 people, both volunteers and public employees, we have been able to run this program all over Panama in the different tasks that we are facing. We have to produce the food bags, we have to deliver also the food bags to the people. The Ministry of Health in Panama is giving what we call a traceability program. When we have a COVID positive person in a home in Panama, we provided them with food bags to their door, so they don't have to go out and they can comply with the quarantine. Our estimate is that we have been able to reach 1.7 million Panamanians and foreigners living in Panama with Panama Solidario. In the agricultural point of view, it has also been a major factor to improve the production of food in Panama. We have invested $251 million buying directly for local industries and producers. Out of this 251 million, $191 million have been invested in the food bags for dry food, such as rice, sugar, salt, oil, flour, coffee, and grains, 80% of which produced in Panama. So we have been investing in our industry and also the agricultural sector. Directly to producers or to farmers in Panama or farmers associations and cooperatives, we have invested $61 million benefiting or buying from more than 14,000 farmers in Panama. We have been able to buy fruit and vegetables. We have been able to buy protein, poultry, swine, and also meat all over the country, and we have very small farmers delivering their production to us, and also large associations of farmers. We have been investing and paying through a good price. We use the local markets index in order to pay a correct price to foster production and to incentivize agricultural economic development, especially in the rural areas of Panama. At the end, we have 5 conclusions for Panama Solidario. Number 1, we have been able to maintain employment, especially in rural areas, thus avoiding the immigration of farmers or their families from the production areas to the cities. Number 2, we have promote investments in our local industry, because they have to cope with the demand of the requirements of Panama Solidario. For instance, a rice mill, they have been able to keep production going and also to make investment in order to cope with the demand of the program. And also, as I mentioned, we are with the Vale Digital, or the digital credit allocated in the ID, the supermarkets and also the convenience stores have been getting a lot of buys, especially, as I mentioned, it is restricted to food and medicine. The third impact, and it's a very important one, is that we have been able to provide stability and confidence with our producer, our farmers, and also the industry. They know that they have to keep on producing in order to provide all of us as consumers with the food that we need daily. The fourth conclusion is that the entire amount of the land dedicated to agriculture has increased 10% if we compare 2019 with no COVID and 2020. So instead of the pandemic and its effects in Panama, we have been able to increase 10% our agricultural land, especially for important crops such as rice in Panama, which is the #1 crop, and also onions. We have been able also to improve the production of dairy products such as milk and cheese. And the fifth and most important effect of Panama Solidario during the pandemic is that the agricultural sector was able to grow 3% amidst these difficult times that we and all of you are living worldwide. So that is the very good number, taking into account that most of the rest, especially Panama being a service-oriented economy, we have the GDP has suffered in most areas, but in the agricultural sector, we were able to grow 3%. So social unrest has been avoided and peace has been maintained in Panama, and also the economic growth of the sector has enabled us to attract both national and international foreign direct investment in our sector in order to maintain employment and promote new ones. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies.
It's very, very inspiring. I have this picture of an army of 80,000 volunteers spreading out across Panama. So congratulations, Mr. Rognoni. Thank you so much for that inspiring and just marvelous images. Thank you very much. So now we will return to Madagascar. So Mr. Zassi, we're so happy to see that you are able to get back on. It is a pleasure to introduce once again Mr. Michelangelo Zassi, who is the Vice Minister in charge of New Cities and Housing for Madagascar. Sir, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Christy. I'm sorry again, I was disconnected from this fantastic event. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending on where you are right now in the part of this world. I would like to thank you very much for this invitation, allowing Madagascar, allowing myself to discuss about our SDG Acceleration Action. My name is Zassi Michelangelo. I'm the Vice Minister in charge of New Cities and Housing in Madagascar government, and I'm glad to share with you what we've done specifically in my department. But before that, I would like to share you some key elements, some key figures about Madagascar in order for all of you to better understand our situation. You know, Madagascar is one of the biggest islands in the world. We have 27 million inhabitants, 17 million of city dwellers that are living in about 590 square kilometers, but only 30% of the territory is occupied by more than half of the population. There's 16% of Malagasy cities who have urban plan. On these cities, 172 have more than 5,000 inhabitants. The national GDP is created in cities, and they account for only 1/3 of total population. And one big figure is that 40% of the GDP is concentrated and still concentrated in the capital of Antananarivo. When we faced the COVID-19 situation, what we wanted to do is we wanted to prevent the imbalance between all these cities. So what we tried to do is we want to dynamize our territories all around Madagascar, starting from 4 specific locations. Of course, we are working on the capital because it weighs a lot in our economy. So we are working right now in the extension of the capital on a plot of land that is about 1,000 hectares. We have a sustainable approach on this project, which is very important for us. We are also working on another location that you have seen recently on TV. So we're working in the south of Madagascar in Fort-Dauphin. We want to build a technopole there because we have one of the internet cable that arrived directly in Fort-Dauphin, and we believe that it is now we have a great opportunity to connect this part of Madagascar to the rest of the world. And this initiative of building this new neighborhood, new sustainable neighborhood in Fort-Dauphin is part of a larger plan that the President, His Excellency Mr. André Rajoelina, has planned for the entire south of Madagascar. Can you just go back on the previous slide, please? Well, thank you very much. We also worked on 2 other cities that was directly impacted by the COVID-19. Those are the island of Nosy Be, which is the first touristic destination. We have many projects there, specifically a new urban center. And there was also another city that was impacted and still impacts by the COVID-19 situation because we closed our frontier, which is the city of Antiran. And there we're working on the touristic pole. We still believe that the tourism we rate a lot in our economy. So the main thing is that we want to dynamize, we want to open up and strengthen the network of our territories because, as I say, the capital weighs a lot in our GDP. If we change the scale from the city to houses, this is the reality of our housing sector. We have 70% of the population that lives in slums, in a precarious condition. We have 60% of the population that lives in only one room, and 10% of the income is spent on housing. And based on the figures that we collected, we have more than 1,730,000 unmet demand for housing. But we have this huge unmet demand, but we had a sustainable approach regarding this housing problematic that we have in Madagascar. What we try to do is we try to approach these problems with different layers. In Madagascar, we don't have school of architecture, but we need to work better with the young architects. So we try to promote the development of the architecture in Madagascar. We used to do architectural competition a few years ago, but this is something that we've forgot. And then recently we try to work again on the architectural competition. And we started with a very nice project with a WWF. The main goal is to promoting architectural creativity. So we work with professional, but we also work with young professional, young Malagasy architects that are currently studying abroad. We also work on the other side of this aspect, working on the construction. For example, we are working on the mobilization of the compressed brick with which is an ecological material. And we did a partnership with Holcim, which is a famous international company, to promote the use of this compressed brick. And we did 2 houses in the heart of the village of Akamasur. The village of Akamasur is built by the famous Père Pedro that does a lot of social action here in Madagascar. We can change also our point of view. So we started with big companies, but we also wanted to work with our startups. So there are Malagasy startups that are still working with BTC. The BTC are the compressed brick in Madagascar, and also startups that work in the field of urban agriculture. So it was very important for us to work on many levels, big companies and startups also, architects and constructors. We have a very important challenge also to work on the other territories. So you've seen
Mr. Zassi, could I ask you to summarize? We're running a little bit late. And I think we actually just lost Mr. Zassi once again. Mr. Zassi, are you there? All right, we will try and get him back on. And in the meantime, Mr. Zassi, thank you so much. And we will pull down his presentation and we will move to the Philippines. Excuse me. So we will now hear from Mr. Simon Bakker, who is the...
at the
Sorry. Ah, Mr. Zassi, you are back. No, we lost you, actually. We lost the connection. Could I ask you just to summarize and to wrap up your presentation? We're running a little bit late and we lost you there for a few minutes.
Oh, I'm really sorry for that. So the main thing is that if you've seen the first figures, we're getting a huge challenge because our economy is really focused on the capital, and our goal is to promote the development of all the regions in a sustainable way. And we try to work with different actors, from startups to big companies like Allsims, from with architects or student of architectures, with big cities or small cities, etc., etc. And in our housing project, for example, we do not build houses only. We try to build communities. So we are working on the agricultural projects that are implemented in our project. We want to also work on our medicinal plants. You might have seen that we have our CVO products that we've used during this COVID-19 situation. So this is the way we try to approach things with different players, big companies, small companies, big actors, small actors, private sector, and also the public sector. So this is how we're trying to change things here in Madagascar, in all the region of this island that is really huge. I'm really sorry that you lost my connection.
It's fine. It's fine. Actually, it's a wonderful example of how resources can be pooled from multiple stakeholders to create a multiplier effect. So, Mr. Zassi, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate it. So now we're going. Thank you. All right, we're now going to move to the Philippines, and it's a pleasure to introduce the founder and CEO of Kenmore Foods, Mr. Simon Bakker. Mr. Bakker, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Christy, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's interesting to hear the speeches earlier, and I guess I'm a bit of the odd fish here as a private sector representative. I'm the CEO of a company called Kenmore Foods. We work in Mindanao. Mindanao is an island in the south of the Philippines. It is the size of Portugal or Austria, but it's with 25 million people. So it's fairly large population and young population, 20 years old on average, 400,000 people entering the workforce every year. We work with smallholder farmers. We work in establishing integrated production systems, and we focus on the crops like cacao, banana, corn. Really, our DNA has been in cacao. We've become over the time, the largest exporter. We export about 75% of the Philippine crop in that space. And so our issue, of course, has been to grow the pond and to provide more livelihoods to farmer and communities. So we've partnered with government and various international governments over the years. We've partnered with international food and chocolate companies, and we've been developing really planting programs within existing agri-systems. And so we planted over 20 million trees these past 8 years. And so we've seen production significantly rise, but we've also seen that the amount of support needed into smallholder farming systems is enormous. And so for us, it's been also a challenge to kind of galvanize resources, because most smallholder communities need a lot of hand-holding to really become productive, especially if you're planting new crops. Briefly on COVID, the COVID period has been tough, especially in the remote rural areas. In the early days, especially, it was hard to reach the various localities due to roadblocks and the limitations on movement of people in general. And we ended up being in many, I would say in 30 provinces. I think we were probably the only party that remained buying and brought money to communities, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hurdles to continue commercial activities. And so I think what we see here is that resilience of communities, multi-cropping systems, multiple buyers is enormously important. And you realize how quickly communities can really become, in this case, very dependent on us. And really, that shouldn't be the case. This COVID period has also been for us a period of reflection, of kind of a developmental vision. And our objective is to boost, of course, agri-production, multi-crop agri-production, boost incomes, and do that in a manner of sustainable, environmentally sustainable, meaning a focus on agroforestry, regenerative agriculture. So maybe to explain a little bit our vision, our development vision, we work in a territory right now. Our focus is in a territory of around 500,000 hectares in certain provinces. And really is what we've taken is a landscape kind of lens to development. If you think about it, the key, first of all, on the lowlands is we call this the economic zones, is to boost employment. So for us as a private company, this means investments in farming, sustainable farming models. We also, within our group of companies, we have a farmer and agri-financing company. So we operate plantations and we invest in plantations of others, and we finance farmers to start more professional agri-production that really boosts employment. From the economic zones, you go to the midlands, and this is really what we call the midlands. These are kind of going towards, going upland. We call it the buffer zone. Buffer zone is where most of the tension is. The tension both economic, where people without farmland go to cut trees, unsustainable production happens, and also a lot of the deforestation happens. So we as Kenmore, we operate, that's our DNA really is a smallholder farming support systems with training, financing, and this is where we work on sustainable smallholder farming agroforestry models. So that means a lot of planting of also forest and native forest trees with cacao, with banana types and other crops. It also means reforestation. This is the area where historically, hundreds of thousands of hectares have been lost, and this is also where, and I think this is interesting, where climate finance can play a role, right? Because by reforestation, earlier I mentioned the need for support in farming systems, and so this is, I think, really a great developmental opportunity, is how to boost, and we are starting to do this now, to use climate finance and certified carbon as a way to support smallholder farming systems by working both within farming system and to do reforestation in the surrounding areas. Now, in the upland areas, in our case, in Mindanao, really, this is the areas where most of the indigenous people live, and this is where the remaining forest is there. So these are the conservation areas. We've consolidated now around 200,000 hectares in upland forest, where we are working on a conservation program, a RED Plus program, where we also are working on livelihood programs, kind of forest-based livelihood programs with indigenous people. And I think it's really that combination of upland conservation, buffer zone protection, and livelihood creation, and then kind of professionalizing lowland communities to start boosting production so that we can absorb the kind of young population that really, ideally, you don't want them to go upland, you want to help them find that employment. That has been, kind of our vision. We are scaling up. We see a lot of more interest now, kind of post COVID, and kind of the more environmental awareness that's going on, and so that's very exciting. We think over the next 5 years we'll be adding around 25,000 new farmers in our agroforestry system, around 10,000 additional farmer loans, 10 million additional trees that we are planting, and generating around 4 million carbon credits. So that plus several thousands of jobs in the lowlands. So just to give you an idea, what we're working on.
Actually, I think this is fantastic because it also illustrates that recovery needs all of us, including the odd fish of the private sector. So, Mr. Bakker, thank you so much for a very dynamic and interesting presentation. Thank you for sharing from the Philippines.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you. And then finally, we'll go from Asia. We'll just return to Europe. And it's such a pleasure to turn the floor over to Mr. Juan Mari Aburto, who is the mayor of Bilbao, Spain. And Mayor Aburto, the floor is now yours. Over to you, sir. And sir, you will need to unmute yourself. I believe you are on mute.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to everybody. First, I would like to thank to the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs and UCLG for their kind invitation to participate in this Mayor Forum, in which I would like to present the Local for Action Hub Bilbao City of Values initiative, launched the last 28th of June in the framework of the Local for Action Hubs initiative promoted by UCLG. The Local for Action Hub Bilbao presents the experience developed in the city of Bilbao. The project Bilbao City of Values, which highlights the importance of values as driving forces of transformation and sustainable urban development. Bilbao is internationally known for its sustained progress and urban transformation, being many times recognized in this area, something we feel really proud of. But despite these recognitions, we want to move forward as a sustainable city, evolve like a more cohesive and inclusive society, and do it as a city of values. And to this end, we are working arduously so that our city is also recognized in the world for its compromise with these values. Relevant international and widely accepted statements, such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights or 2030 Agenda and its SDGs, as well as our city's founding charter, consider and enhance the importance of growing a common socially accepted charter of values. Bilbao has its own hallmarks, which with no doubt distinguish us, and of which we are prideful to share. Our universal vocation and commitment to a better future characterizes the citizenship of Bilbao. In this context, and with their inestimable help, in 2016, we launched an initiative focused on the promotion of a city of values. This was a pioneering initiative that was born from the firm conviction that values are the driving force behind people and the human development of a city. From that conviction, Bilbao City of Values was conceived as an innovative project that is being developed as a space for collaborative work. In order to procure these challenges, Bilbao City of Values was devised as a process of continuous participation, based on something that is fundamental for us, as it is the search for consensus among different individuals and collectives. From the Bilbao City Council, we are aware of the importance to share ideas and projects, and the need to work on them hand in hand with citizens to collaborate towards the single objective of constructing the city that all the inhabitants want. The joint action of all the city stakeholders is essential. Therefore, from the Bilbao City Council, we are committed to create new spaces that allow us to move forward together with a common shared direction. And that is precisely what we want with this hub. We want to collaborate, cooperate, and share to build societies that ground over positive values together. We do not want this project of a common shared charter of values to be just something from our city, from Bilbao. we want to share this reflexive exercise of articulating citizen values into a common shared city political framework to all the cities which want to participate. One of the outputs of the project was a jointly constructed values charter for Bilbao as the result of a wide citizen participation process. The Bilbao Values Charter identifies and includes the 17 values that citizens consider to be the backbone of coexistence in our society. Allow me to insist on the idea that I would like to transfer you with this intervention. Collaboration and participation are always key to moving forward, but now more than ever because of the COVID-19. Among others, we could highlight values as solidarity, co-responsibility, social justice, equality, or commitment. I would also like to highlight something that seems fundamental to us. Bilbao City of Values has become a necessary tool to strengthen the democratic participation of young people in all areas of society and guarantee their influence on the development of the city's values. The above-mentioned results are local in nature and reflect the city's own values, but they are interwoven with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the 2030 Agenda, and the SDGs. The local becomes global. I am convinced that to overcome the consequences of the health crisis that we are experiencing, our cities and local governments will play an essential role, and they will need our individual commitment as well as the collective one. Local for Action Hub Bilbao Cities of Values is a good opportunity to put values at the epicenter of the transformation of our cities in the search for greater environmental, economic, social, and cultural sustainable development. Thank you very much, and as we say in our own language, in Basque language, eskerrik asko.
Wonderful. Thank you, Meriberto, so much for sharing this with us. You know, it's very appropriate, I think, to end with your presentation for this session today, because values guide and motivate attitudes and action. And so what better illustration than to wrap up with your story today. So thank you, sir, so much. So in closing, this was such a short meeting, and yet an hour just zipped by so quickly. I'm sure that all of you across the world are inspired and perhaps challenged, but motivated to move forward with our own bold commitments and actions towards sustainable recovery and development. And I know I am truly inspired, and it's a wonderful way for me to finish my day here in Singapore, having traveled around the world and hearing such concrete actions towards sustainable development and the achievement of the SDGs. Thank you, panelists, very much for your sincere and authentic and heartfelt sharing. I would also like to take this opportunity to very briefly just reinforce what we've heard just a little bit about for those of you who might have joined us later about the SDG Acceleration Actions program. The platform was set up by the UN DESA in the lead up to the 2019 SDG Summit to capture new, ambitious commitments and initiatives. So currently, as you've heard, there are over 300 inspiring new SDG actions that have been published on the platform. So noteworthy SDG Acceleration Actions are featured by UN DESA at the annual sessions of the HLPF and other high-profile UN events throughout the year. So you can continue to look forward to hearing more about those. The registration is open year-round, and we encourage all of you to register your acceleration actions with the platform. For more information, about including the selection criteria, please do visit its website, which I believe is shown in the comment box. So wherever you are across the world, stay safe, be well, and this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Christy. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.